The woman, in order to go on a date with her young boyfriend, actually froze her own daughter to death on the balcony. The cause of this tragic event was simply because Rin's reading voice disturbed her sleep. The angry mother immediately picked up a clock and smashed it against Rin. The well-behaved Rin could only endure the pain and kept apologizing to her mother, but in her rage, the mother habitually opened the balcony door, threw Rin outside. Then, she coldly locked the door behind her and warned Rin not to disturb her rest while she reflected on her actions outside. Poor Rin could only silently pick up her textbook, then sat on the balcony reading her book. As the weather grew colder, it started to snow. Rin could only curl up on the balcony, silently reading her textbook. But as she read, tears started to fall involuntarily. At this moment, her mother, who had done her makeup, opened the door and once again warned Rin not to disturb her under any circumstances. After saying this, she locked the door again. Rin could only obediently continue reading her textbook, but the weather kept getting colder. Rin was trembling from the cold, yet she still kept reading, believing that if she did so, perhaps her mother would forgive her. But the weather outside was simply too cold. Rin slowly lost consciousness as she froze. But until the moment of her death, she still believed that her mother would come back and carry her into the warm house. However, at that moment, her cruel mother was out shopping with her new boyfriend, completely forgetting that Rin was locked outside on the balcony. The next day, the teacher at Rin's school noticed that she hadn't shown up for class. She immediately went to Rin's house, but after ringing the doorbell for a long time with no response, the teacher, unaware that Rin's mother had not returned all night, inadvertently left Rin freezing to death on the balcony. Afterward, Rin's soul arrived at the Ministry of Death, which is the place where souls are assigned to be reincarnated. The staff would investigate the cause of death before deciding whether the soul should go to heaven or hell. Soon, it was determined that Rin's cause of death was homicide. After confirming the cause of death, the staff decided to send Rin's soul to heaven. However, Rin insisted that she should go to hell to be punished, because she thought she had been a bad child. In her memories, her mother had once been so beautiful and gentle. She would take her shopping and buy her favorite extracurricular books. But Rin always felt she made her mother angry, so she thought she was a bad child who deserved punishment in hell. Her only regret was that she never got the chance to draw a picture of a happy scene with her mother in a sea of flowers. So, Rin asked the staff, hoping that in her next life, she could be her mother's daughter again. The two staff members, who understood the full truth, couldn't bear to shatter Rin's beautiful image of her mother, so they made up a kind lie. They told Rin that if she went to heaven, she would definitely be able to meet her mother. Rin smiled happily upon hearing this. After thanking them, she cheerfully ran toward the gates of heaven, perhaps believing she would soon see her mother again. However, at Rin's funeral, her mother didn't show even the slightest remorse for her daughter's death. In fact, she was even relieved, happy that she could now be with her boyfriend without any distractions. This scene was witnessed by Rin's teacher, who had come to the funeral. The teacher angrily slapped her across the face. It turns out that the teacher had noticed the bruises on Rin's body before. She had once asked Rin about it, but Rin always avoided the question. Later, the teacher secretly investigated, but she never expected that before she could uncover the truth, Rin had already been killed by her mother. The teacher angrily denounced that woman as a demon, saying she didn't deserve to be Rin's mother. At that moment, the police also arrived. It turned out that the funeral home staff had discovered multiple signs of long-term abuse on Rin's body. They had immediately reported it to the authorities. The police arrested the cruel woman, and she would now face the punishment she deserved. After watching this animated short film, I believe everyone must be feeling very heavy-hearted, and also very angry. However, the next story will be a heartwarming one. Momo, when saying goodbye to her mother, was shocked to find an eerie shadow at her feet, waving at her. At first, Momo thought it was just a hallucination, but then, while sheltering from the rain, 3 ugly yokai suddenly appeared beside her. Momo was terrified and immediately ran away. Momo was just an ordinary girl. After her father passed away, her mother, Ikuko, sold their apartment in the city and moved with Momo to live in the countryside, since her grandparents didn't have the energy to manage the yard. The house was old and run down. Momo, coming from the city, didn't like it here. When someone greeted her, the shy Momo didn't respond. While unpacking, Momo discovered a beautifully crafted box in the attic. Inside was a yellowing ancient book. Her grandmother told Momo that it was a yokai encyclopedia passed down from the Edo period. Momo naturally wasn't interested in the ugly yokai, but after they left, 3 drops of water entered the box. That night, Momo started to recall a letter her father had written to her. She remembered having a huge argument with him that day. But that night, her father encountered a shipwreck and never returned. While sorting through his belongings, Momo found an unfinished letter in her father's drawer. The letter only contained the words to Momo. Momo couldn't accept her father's sudden death. And ever since then, she had closed off her heart. She couldn't fit into the island life. Ikuko, in an effort to help Momo become more cheerful, took the initiative to greet the other children. That's when Momo met Yoda, a boy her age. In contrast to Momo's introversion, Yoda was very outgoing. Due to her job, Momo's mother needed to take a boat to the neighboring city for work, but as Ikuko boarded the boat, an eerie shadow appeared beside her. Waving at Momo, Momo rubbed her eyes in disbelief. But the boat had already started to leave the harbor. However, the strange events didn't end there. When Momo returned home, she noticed strange sounds coming from the attic. Not only was her pudding completely eaten, but she also heard something calling her name. A series of paranormal events frightened Momo, so she immediately ran out of the house. But as she turned around, she saw 2 shadows chasing after her. Terrified, Momo ran for her life. The 2 shadows kept following her, and Momo had no choice but to run wildly through the town. Eventually, she managed to lose them, but she got lost in the process. Luckily, she met Yoda, who told her that if she ever got lost again, she could simply follow the sea to find her way home. But Momo didn't dare go home on her own. She waited at the harbor until her mother finished work and returned. When they returned home, Momo stood at the door, too scared to enter. Just then, a yokai suddenly licked her with its tongue, and then disappeared. Momo told her mother about the strange events she encountered, but Ikuko thought Momo was just making up excuses because she didn't want to stay here. The next day, when Ikuko went to work, Momo, who had hoped to sleep in, again heard strange noises. Momo couldn't stay in the house for even a moment longer. Just then, Yoda came by and invited her to play diving. So, Momo put on her swimsuit and went with them to the seaside. But the bridge was too high, and Momo was too scared to jump. Watching the other kids playing in the water, Momo felt like she couldn't fit in, so she decided to leave. Not daring to return home, Momo wandered aimlessly around the town. Then, it started raining heavily. While sheltering from the rain, Momo finally saw the 3 yokai who had been following her. She immediately ran away in fear. Her grandfather, seeing the terrified Momo, comforted her, and she gradually calmed down. Momo noticed the yokai paintings hanging in her grandfather's room. Her grandfather explained that those were once gods, who, after falling from grace, eventually turned into yokai. He then told Momo that there was no need to fear the yokai. As long as she gathered the courage to stare at them with her glasses, they would stop appearing. But whenever Momo saw a yokai, she was terrified out of her mind and couldn't bring herself to look at them. In the middle of the night, the 3 yokai found Momo, who was sleeping. However, Momo suddenly grabbed a broom and prepared to hit them. The 3 yokai were startled, and they quickly explained that they were here to repay a favor. They had originally been sealed in the yokai encyclopedia, and it was thanks to Momo opening the box that day that they were able to escape. The 3 yokai introduced themselves to Momo. Momo, scared out of her wits, grabbed the broom and started waving it around. In her panic, she knocked the token out of Kawa. Ivy urgently warned Momo not to break the token, as it was a very important pass. Hearing this, Momo was determined to break the token. The 3 yokai immediately knelt down and begged for mercy. To get the token back, they promised to fulfill any of Momo's requests. Momo immediately demanded that they leave. After some negotiation, the 3 yokai reluctantly agreed. But when Momo went to the bathroom, she found Ivy using the toilet. When she went into the living room, she found Kawa lying on the couch watching TV. Momo had planned to threaten them by breaking the token, but Kawa told her that if she broke it, they would die. If that happened, Momo would be a murderer. Mame pulled Momo aside, handing her some fresh fruit to eat. Momo was certain that they had stolen it from the fields. Helpless, Momo finally gave in. As long as they didn't cause any more trouble, she allowed them to stay in the attic. Just like that, Momo ended up living together with 3 yokai. With their company, Momo was able to momentarily forget the painful memories. That night, the yokai began their work. Every once in a while, they needed to send a report to the heavens about Momo and her mother, Ikuko. This time, they entrusted Mame with the task of writing the letter, but when Mame began to write, he realized that she couldn't write at all. Meanwhile, on the table, Ivy saw the letter that Momo's father had written to her. Thinking it was an unfinished letter from Mame, he started writing it. Just then, Mame returned, and they performed the ritual to send the letter to the heavens. Momo was invited to join them. After performing a strange dance, the letter disappeared into thin air. Momo thought that they could send letters to the dead, so she wanted to write a letter to her father, because she had so much to say to him. But when Momo looked at the table, she found that the letter was gone. Ivy realized he had made a mistake, but didn't dare to tell Momo the truth. Instead, he pretended to help her search for the letter. Momo, unable to find the letter, felt extremely disappointed. But just then, Momo saw her mother, laughing and talking with a man. This made Momo feel uneasy. She thought her mother had already forgotten her father. The next day, Momo discovered the 3 yokai stealing vegetables, and, to her shock, Kawa was wearing Ikuko's most treasured mirror around his waist. It was a gift from her father to Ikuko. However, during the struggle, the mirror was accidentally shattered. When Ikuko heard the noise, she rushed upstairs to check. She didn't care about the broken mirror. She was more concerned if Momo had been hurt, because in her heart, Momo was her most precious treasure. Ikuko also noticed the vegetables around her and asked what had happened. Momo had no choice but to confess, telling her that there were yokai living in their house, and they had stolen the vegetables. Ikuko couldn't see the yokai, so she thought Momo was lying to avoid responsibility. In her anger, she slapped Momo. However, it was this slap that made all the resentment in Momo's heart explode. She complained that her mother didn't care about her, that she was never home, and that she had even forgotten about her father. After saying this, she ran out of the house crying. Ikuko, overwhelmed by emotion, had an asthma attack, and could only relieve it with medication, but she didn't rest, because outside, the sky was darkening, and a typhoon was about to hit the island. Ikuko regretted it deeply. She frantically searched for Momo. At that moment, Momo was sitting with the 3 yokai at the place where they first met. Momo also shared what was weighing on her heart. It turned out that her parents' first date was at a concert, so Momo secretly bought 3 tickets, hoping to surprise them on their wedding anniversary. But her father didn't attend because of an important work matter, which made Momo very angry. She said the one thing she regretted for the rest of her life: never come back. Then, on that very day, her father died in a shipwreck, leaving behind the unfinished letter. Ivy, realizing how important that letter was, had to tell Momo that the letter had been accidentally sent to heaven. Then, he revealed their true identities. In fact, they were from heaven. After people die, their souls wander for a short time, before finally reaching heaven. During this time, these souls cannot watch over their loved ones, so heaven sends yokai like them to temporarily protect the loved ones of the deceased. Tomorrow, Momo's father would finally reach heaven, and once that happened, they would be able to return to report. But at that moment, a friend of Ikuko found Momo and told her to go home quickly, because Ikuko's condition had worsened. It turned out that Ikuko, in her search for Momo, had been running through the heavy rain, which had caused her asthma to worsen. But what worried Momo even more was that the only doctor in town was out of the island, and with the storm, he couldn't return. At that moment, her grandmother also revealed the full truth. It turned out that Ikuko had shouldered the responsibility of the family on her own. The reason she had left Momo alone at home was because she had to keep working to support the family. Ikuko had not forgotten her father. She had simply hidden all the memories in a corner. Whenever Momo wasn't around, her mother would secretly look at old photos. But for Momo, and for the family, she had to stay strong. Looking at the photos that Ikuko had hidden, Momo understood everything at that moment. Regret and guilt overwhelmed her, causing her immense pain. Momo ran outside by herself, determined to bring the doctor back no matter what. At this point, Yoda and Koichi caught up with her. In fact, Koichi also liked Momo's mother. He decided to help Momo bring the doctor from the neighboring island. Koichi rode his motorbike, carrying Momo across the sea bridge, but the typhoon was too powerful. Eventually, a piece of torn cloth got caught in the bike's wheel, causing them to stop. The cloth was tangled so tightly that they couldn't pull it out. At this moment, Momo felt hopeless. She could only shout to the sky, "Dad, please save Mom." Maybe her father really heard her. The next moment, a miracle truly happened. Ivy appeared, leading a multitude of yokai. The yokai used their bodies to block the violent storm. They decided to do everything they could to help Momo. In the end, with the help of the yokai, Ikuko received timely treatment and was saved from the danger of death, and it was time for Ivy and the others to leave as well. Momo sincerely thanked them. Before they left, Momo asked them to deliver the letter she had written to her father, but just then, Momo discovered that they had stolen more fruit. However, this time, she chose to forgive them. Finally, as Ivy recited a spell, their bodies slowly became transparent. The three yokai turned into droplets of water and flew back to heaven. Meanwhile, the broken clock downstairs suddenly started working again. This signified that Momo was beginning a new life. There was a legend on the island that if you made a small boat out of straw, you could send your thoughts to your deceased loved ones. All the little boats sailed into the deep sea, but one of them floated back. On it was a letter from her father to Momo. Ikuko couldn't see anything, but this time, she chose to believe in her daughter. She asked Momo to read the letter to her. This film, A Letter to Momo, weaves the heavy theme of life and death into the most heartwarming and gentle story. The three yokai not only protected the mother and daughter, but also redeemed Momo's closed heart.